The Spooktober season has come and gone, but there's still a lot of scary things to be seen out here, from bugs, drillers, leaf lovers special, and mission control's face. But arguably the scariest thing down here, the thing that can strike fear through any graybeard, are mission warnings, which is what we intend to talk about today. For those who don't know, warnings in this game are additional hazard modifiers that add extra challenges and mutators across the mission, each with varying degrees of severity. Now, given the belated spooky season, I wanted to do something a bit fun. I wanted to look at all these warnings and put them in a tier list. But not just any tier list. I wanted to look at these warnings from this type of scale.
No pain. Mild. Moderate. Severe. Very severe.
That's right, a pain scale, if you will. Least painful to most painful. So to clarify this category, we're looking at these warnings by how much pressure and stress they're going to give most players. How much pain will players have to endure with this modifier? So let's take a deep dive at the Mutators of Deep Rock Galactic and see how they rate on painful experiences. Cave Leech Cluster spawns cave leeches in higher numbers and more likely to be clumped together. This would be a higher threat, however it is a toss-up whether a cave will actually have an increased amount of leeches or not. Cave gem plays a big role in how easy or difficult this modifier can be. You can have a cave system with dozens of leeches across the ceiling and another that has less than 5 total. And frankly, even when working properly, cave leeches adds a minimal challenge as they are meant to punish a player's lack of awareness. A common trap for new players, but a lesson quickly learned that reinforces the habit of looking upward. Plus a scout on flare duty nullifies the advantage a cave leech has. This puts cave leech cluster square in the mild category. They are a nuisance, yes, but it's nothing compared to some of the other warnings on this list. Elite Threat periodically spawns more powerful variants of enemies. They are larger, emit a red glow, and have the Elite title in their name. On top of unique appearance, they also have increased stats, making them hit harder and soak up more damage. This is a prime example of a middle-of-the-road modifier. Not too easy, not too difficult, just the right amount of pressure. Elites can be seen as occasional mini-bosses that push your team to think on their feet and adapt when these enemies show up on the field. They provide a decent extra challenge to the enemy roster and will certainly up the pain factor of a mission. For that, it earns a solid spot on the moderate tier, a gold standard. Exploder Infestation, as its name suggests, periodically spawns waves of exploders. Exploders already have an infamous reputation among the enemy roster. They are silent and can easily sneak up behind and blow you up. Just 1 to 2 exploders is enough to down most players. This modifier cranks all of that up to 11. Waves of exploders now continuously spawn throughout the entire mission. Stat-wise, they're no different from regular exploders, with their only difference being their increased size, which differentiates them from naturally spawned exploders. This modifier will require you to be paranoid and observant of any incoming exploder waves as they can occur at any time. Whether it's during exploration, setting up defenses, swarms, or even the downtimes between swarms, anything is fair game. All of these factors create a chaotic environment that's capable of bringing serious pain. To the uninitiated, this modifier can feel like hell on earth. To the initiated, it's manageable but can still devolve rapidly if things go pear-shaped. Aside from being observant, the only hard counter, and I use that with quotes, to this modifier is 2 classes, the Driller and Scout. Both have access to freeze weaponry that's capable of nullifying exploder eruptions, in addition to the Driller who has access to the Wave Cooker, which also nullifies exploders. That being said, only 2 classes have access to this type of weaponry, and while it does provide a defensive edge, you'll want to rely on your wits and awareness above all else to survive. Exploder Infestation most certainly deserves a spot in very severe on our pain list. The only reason this doesn't have the highest rating is because there are modifiers on this list that can be considered worse than Exploder Infestation, which is a perfect segue into our next warning. Haunted Cave spawns an unknown horror at the beginning of a mission. It has the appearance of a ghostly bolt detonator and is impervious to all forms of damage while moving incredibly slow. It will focus on one player at a time and hone in on their location. If it gets close enough, it performs a stronger version of the detonator's stomp attack. This modifier requires an immense amount of coordination. You have to constantly keep tabs on the monster while someone distracts it and keeps it away from the rest of your team. Sounds easy in practice, but when you throw in other factors like mission objectives and enemy swarms, things can get hectic real fast. The horror can cause chaos and disruption for the unprepared, and can lead to team wipes if it corners you or downs multiple teammates in one strike. And if the horror doesn't get you, other enemies in the chaos that it brings will. This modifier is quite infamous for the amount of frustration it can bring to a mission. Even for the experienced, Haunted Cave is a serious pain in the butt to deal with, considering that it lasts throughout the entire mission, and cannot be destroyed, only distracted, which is why this modifier goes in the highest pain rating on this list. Lethal enemies doubles all melee damage dealt by enemies. This makes bugs like the Slasher or Stingtail twice as dangerous. Enemies that already dealt high damage are now capable of 1-2 tapping you. Every other bug is now just as dangerous. Even swarmers can pose a significant threat. Teamwork and positioning is now more important than ever. You have to be continually on the move and be constantly aware of where your enemies are. All it takes is a few hits and you'll find yourself on the floor. Even a well-rounded team can struggle if just a few bugs break through your defensive line and get some hits in. For first-timers, this mutator is a wake-up call in understanding class movement tech. For seasoned veterans, it's a looming pressure knowing that any melee attack can easily down you, and any mistake can backfire drastically. Remember, this modifier is active throughout the entire mission, which means you can't take a breather until you are back in that drop pod, which means you are going to be in for a rough time. This mutator is not for the faint of heart, or those averse to significant pain, and more than earns a place as another addition to our highest pain rating of the list. Lithophage Outbreak is unique for the fact that it doesn't spawn with other warnings, it always spawns by itself. This mutator adds the Rockpox cleanup objectives to your list of tasks that must be completed before extracting. It also adds Rockpox enemies as an additional sub-faction along with normal bugs. The Rockpox faction offers a decent bump in difficulty. They are much more dangerous than their normal counterparts, primarily due to their Rockpox-based attacks, which are capable of incapacitating and stunning players if their infection levels reach critical. However, Rockpox enemies come with an additional weakness. Destroying the spores across their bodies deals additional damage, and destroying all the spores nullifies these enemies completely, regardless of their remaining HP. Compared to our last two mutators, this one is a welcome reprieve in terms of its pain level. Rockpox is another middle-of-the-road modifier in terms of pain intensity. Rockpox enemies offer a variety of challenge, and while they may have their own weaknesses, their ability to infect you with Rockpox should not be underestimated, which is why Lithophage Outbreak earns the rating of moderate on the pain scale. Low O2 adds an oxygen meter to the mission. Air depletes over time and must be replenished with oxygen. Failure to do so will cause you to steadily lose HP until you recover oxygen. The mule, along with various other mining equipment, have been equipped with oxygen tanks that refill your air while in its vicinity. This limits how often you will be exploring on your own and will force you to change your exploration tactics to ensure you don't run out of air. Stray too far and you'll end up depleted of both oxygen and health, and stranded far away from your team, which makes recovery more difficult as the team needs to ensure they make it to you with their own supply of oxygen. This makes the locations of resupply pods more significant since they act as extra nodes of oxygen that can be spaced throughout the cave system, leaving you less likely to be starved for oxygen. This mutator is more manageable in certain missions, like Escort or Point Extract, due to how often you will be staying in proximity to these objectives with their added oxygen tanks. But make no mistake, low O2 missions will not be a cakewalk. It requires you to adopt a drastically different style of play, and can be growing pains for some who don't like to be reined in and confined to limited exploration and traversal. It takes some getting used to for first timers, and even when you do get the hang of it, it's an irritating pain in the back of your head. It's a mutator you really don't want to see spiral out of control and be on the receiving end of, which is why low O2 earns a spot in the very severe tier. Mactera Plague. All Mactera enemies will spawn more frequently, while Glyphid enemies will spawn less frequently. Mactera are an already dangerous enemy type in this game due to their mobility, projectile damage, and for a select few, their ability to hinder movement, and this modifier causes them to show up in droves. The most dangerous among them being the Mactera Trijaw with its triple projectile attack. Strafing and finding cover is now more important in surviving, as Mactera can easily shoot you down if just a small handful of their projectiles hit you all at once. Worse yet, their quiet nature allows them to sneak up and ambush if you aren't paying attention to your surroundings. In terms of pain, the Mactera Plague will give you a beating, due to the increase of highly mobile enemies that now show up in greater overwhelming numbers. That being said, they do have weaknesses you can exploit to mitigate this headache of a scenario. Mactera first and foremost are incredibly weak to ice. If they are frozen entirely, it's an instant death regardless of their remaining HP. Secondly, Mactera do not perform well in tight spaces. Building roofs, bunkers, or small tunnels can funnel them all into a smaller space, allowing you and your team to deal some serious damage to a Mactera swarm when it's bundled up. Even with these advantages, Mactera Plague is still a dangerous modifier that should not be underestimated, and you should ensure you have a plan as to how you're going to reliably counter them throughout the entire mission. Because of this, it earns a spot in the severe category on the list. Parasites. Every enemy spawns a parasite on death. Parasites are equal to that of a single swarmer. Think of this as a weaker version of Swarmageddon, which we will cover later. There's really not much to say on this one. It's a largely harmless warning as parasites rarely pose a threat and are easily dealt with. AoE and crowd controls make this warning particularly irrelevant. This warning can be more annoying when paired with other mutators, but these are very niche scenarios you are less likely to encounter, and parasites by itself hardly poses a threat. It's no surprise this mutator falls directly into the no pain tier. Regenerative Bugs allows enemies to recover health after not taking damage for a few seconds. Despite its name, this modifier affects every type of enemy present during the mission. If enemy health is not fully depleted, they will continuously regenerate health till their HP is full. Less noticeable on chaff and weaker enemies, more noticeable on enemies with larger health pools. Damage over time effects can easily prevent the health regen effect from occurring. There are only a handful of niche scenarios that can make this modifier a pain to deal with. Unless you are dealing with Corlock Tyrant Weeds, some Shellbacks or Nadocyte Breeders, or any other bulky, uncommon enemy, you are probably going to be in for a mild experience with this modifier. Rival Presence adds the rival faction as an additional enemy present throughout the mission, a particularly dangerous faction that poses a greater challenge than Glyphids due to the advanced weaponry and technology at their disposal. Everything from shredders, patrollers, turrets, and the rare chance of a nemesis are capable of spawning. On top of rival enemies, there is usually a network of turrets deployed somewhere in the caves that have locked down an area. Until these turrets are shut down, exploration will be incredibly dangerous until they are cleared out. You can destroy them one by one or find the turret outpost and hack it, causing all turrets in the area to self-destruct. All rival enemies have a weakness to fire damage, to the point where if they are fully ignited, they are instantly destroyed. This makes the Driller particularly valuable against this faction, or any other class that is capable of modding their weapons for fire damage. But make no mistake, the Rival Presence modifier will throw you for a loop, even when coming prepared. If too many things go wrong and your team loses control of the situation, rival enemies can easily pin you down with their turret emplacements and blast you with laser beams from afar, which makes them a particularly frustrating faction to deal with in addition to the bugs. Originally I planned to put this mutator in very severe, but upon some further reflection, it wasn't nearly as bad as the other contenders we've already seen put in that tier. Especially when I remember that rival patrol bots can sometimes be hacked, allowing you to turn their firepower against your enemies. However, the hurdles that Rival Presence provides, along with the dangers of certain rival units, places this mutator in severe. Shield Disruption completely removes access to your shields. To compensate for no shields, every player now has 30% damage resistance. Playing without a shield is definitely a harrowing experience. Normally with a shield you can shrug off weak attacks and prevent damage done directly to your health. Having no shield entirely means that you will have to endure every bit of damage done to you, albeit it's weaker due to your new damage resistance, but it will chip away at your health. This makes health restoration and further damage mitigation twice as important during this modifier. Using the Vampire perk will allow you to recover some HP every time you melee kill an enemy. While your personal shields no longer work, the gunner is still able to deploy their shield generator to help push enemies away and block any incoming damage. This is a mutator that pretty much guarantees a painful experience to a certain degree. It just becomes a matter of how much you can endure or how much you can avoid. For that reason alone, it earns a spot in the second highest category of very severe on the pain scale. The damage reduction is the only thing preventing this from going up to the highest tier. Swarmageddon sends constant waves of swarmers. You might be surprised that this modifier is actually not as low on the list as you might think. Despite swarmers being a weak enemy, they are stronger in groups, and this modifier seems to send larger amounts of swarmers than typically seen in your average mission. These larger swarms can easily tear through your shields and shred your health if they manage to surround you. Your best bet is to stay on the move and bring loadouts centered around crowd control to keep these swarms under control and away from your team. Another pain point of Swarmageddon that I've experienced is that swarmers force you to use more ammo than usual. Even when you have a handle on them, a constant stream of swarmers will slowly whittle down your ammo reserves. This was a bit of a tougher one to rate, oddly enough. When you have a handle on swarmers and plenty of crowd control at your disposal, this modifier can kind of fall into the mild category. You still don't want them to overwhelm you, but at least you're keeping their numbers under control. If things are going badly, however, swarmers can make an experience more painful, as they are a relentless enemy that won't give you any bit of breathing room and can blindside you if you lose track of them. So with that being said, I rate them under moderate due to how much disruption they are capable of causing, but on a good day, they only bring mild levels of pain. Duck and Cover is Mactera Plague on steroids. Majority of enemy spawns are now replaced with ranged enemies, from web and acid spitters, menaces, septic spreaders, and all the Mactera variants. In addition, there is also an increase in spitballers, barrage infectors, and scale brambles. And if this bullet hell roster wasn't bad enough, this mutator sends them by the dozen. And when I say dozen, I mean dozen. The amount of enemies this mutator sends is honestly kind of insane and is the stuff of nightmares. If you do not come prepared to counter any and all projectile tactics, enemies will make short work of you and your squad. This modifier will be hell on earth, and you'll have to use every trick in the book to survive. And I can't think of any other mutator that truly encapsulates this feeling than Duck and Cover. Ebonite Outbreak adds Ebonite Bugs from the machine event as an additional enemy spawn, complete with their damage immunities and weakness to pickaxes. To counter this, the mule has been upgraded with a portable overcharger that constantly deploys overcharge batteries. Now it seems like this would rate higher on the pain scale, but this mutator brings a few hidden benefits that place it lower on the list. For starters, the mule deploys overcharge batteries throughout the entire mission, even when Ebonites are not around. This means you can keep overcharging your pickaxes to use against normal bugs in addition to Ebonites. Paired with the Vampire perk, this allows you to easily restore health by racking up plenty of melee kills with your overcharged power attacks. Having a constant access to power attacks drastically increases your survivability and allows you to conserve on ammo. With all these mechanics working in your favor, it's no surprise that this is a pretty tame modifier that allows you to run wild with melee attacks and thus earns a spot in the no pain tier. And that sums up every warning in the game, organized from least painful to most painful. Honestly, had more fun than I thought I would making this little tier list. I'll definitely have to consider doing it again in the future. As stated in the beginning, this list is far from definitive, as one's personal experiences can very much influence how they perceive certain mutators. So do let me know in the comments how similar or differently you would have rated some of these warnings. As always, leave a like below if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you want to stay tuned for future projects. Oh, and if you want to see more DRG videos, check out the DRG playlist I've linked in the description. Until then, I wish you all well, and I'll catch you folks next time.